Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your fearless host, Angie Scott.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. I'm your host, Angie Scott, and I thank you everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate coming back week after week and listening to the show. And this week, I'm going to do something a little different. I do this from time to time, but just kind of a candid solo episode this week. Just got back from Lake Hickory in Hickory, North Carolina, my second tournament as a boater with the Lady Bass Anglers Association, which is the Women's Pro Bass Tour. And just wanted to give a quick recap and maybe go over some things I learned, and maybe it will help some of you out there who are anglers and want to fish tournaments. And maybe you're a co-angler and you're thinking about making that jump from co-angler to a boater, and just kind of my experience with that, since that's something I've just recently done. Now, I haven't spent a ton of time in the back of the boat, so some ladies will fish years and years and tons of tournaments from the back of the boat before they make the jump to go to boater. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. You need to do what, you're comfortable with. And, we always encourage people, especially the really good co-anglers, to make that leap at some point. But there's nothing wrong with just being a co-angler in the back of the boat. I did it for a few reasons. Number one, I'm a licensed captain, and so I kind of like to be in control of the boat. That's kind of one reason. You are limited as a co-angler as well. You're at the mercy of the boater where they're going to go. I like to finesse fish a lot, and so a lot of times these pros, they love to burn, run and gun and fish fast and throw crankbaits and top waters and just, cover a lot of area or cover a lot of water in a short amount of time. And that makes it really hard at the back of the boat to do that slower finesse fishing when the boat's moving so fast. So that's another reason. The biggest reason for me is just I'm one of those people. I'm very busy. I have a lot going on in my life as far as this podcast, putting an episode out every week. Something that Angie Thompson mentioned when I interviewed her a couple episodes back, because she's also a podcaster with the Fishing Business Podcast, but she understands how much time goes into putting an episode out. You've got to plan, you've got to schedule an interview if you're interviewing somebody. Editing, I always edit my episodes to try to make them sound as professional as possible and something that you guys want to listen to. And then, all the stuff behind the scenes, uploading it, writing out your show notes, adding photos, tagging, just so many steps. I started listing out the steps one time just to see, and it overwhelmed me. I'm like, okay, I don't have time to list out all these steps. There's too many. So, I do that week after week after week. But on top of that, I also have a full-time job that keeps me extremely busy. I love my job. Absolutely. It's in the industry that right where I want to be with Freedom Boat Club. It's all about boating. I love talking to people about boating. But that's extremely time consuming as well. And so I have very, very, very little downtime, and I love to fish. So how do I work that into my schedule? Well, for me, the only way I can really do that is if I force myself to do it. And so by fishing with the Lady Bass Anglers Association as a boater, that forces me to have to make time to get out on the water and fish. And so that's really one of the biggest reasons. And there's a bunch of other little reasons as well. I wanted to get to know the ladies and have the experience. So many things. But for me, the biggest thing is this forces me to get out on the water and fish. And as a boater, as a co-angler, I'm I'm not saying there's not a lot that goes into it, but I know from experience just fishing a few local tournaments as a co-angler, you can really just show up, have your 5 or 6 rods and reels ready to go with some different variety of baits tied on, and the boater's controlling where you're going to fish. So you don't really have to do a whole lot of research as far as learning the lay of the lake, figuring out, doing all this pre-research. There's a lot less time involved. You can certainly do all that, but you don't necessarily have to, since you're not the one that's going to be actually running the boat, making the decisions, and that sort of thing. And so this forces me to do all of that. And so that's why I decided to make that leap. Now, I had high expectations running into this year, thinking, everything was going to go super smoothly and we're going to hit the ground running with this new boat and everything's going to go great. And I'm going to try to get Rookie of the Year, my first year, as a boater. And that's just not how this year has gone. I mean, everybody knows with the pandemic, manufacturing's behind. It's hard to get boats. I mean, I'm thankful I even have the boat. Like Key West went above and beyond to get that boat ready for me before the Ray Hubbard tournament. We went to South Carolina and picked it up. We did an episode about that, but I mean, I'm blessed just to have the boat at this point. And so there's been some issues that we've had to work out, and there's still some issues that we have to work out, as I learned in Lake Hickory. So basically, we got the live scope issue worked out. That was one of the big issues down at Ray Hubbard, is that the trolling motor on this boat, which is awesome. It's auto deploy Altera, but I probably would have been better off going with the manual deploy trolling motor because it's really hard to configure that to work with a live scope unit. And so luckily I came across that cornfield crappie gear mount out of Kentucky, where the guy there patented this design to mount to the auto deploy Altera trolling motors. So that worked out. I hired a guide out here on my local lake a couple days before we left for Hickory to help me learn a little bit more about the live scope and how to actually see your bait and follow your bait and watch the fish react. So we went out and did that Thursday before we left for Lake Hickory. Friday, I set aside a couple hours just to take the boat out in the morning and learn and apply what he showed me the day before on my own. And so I get out there, I line up the boat, position it just like he showed me how to do on a tree where I knew there was a good tree. And I had it perfectly dialed in on my Garmin unit. I could see it. I could see the fish. There were some big fish down there too. And I had my little crappie pole ready to go and jig, and I was gonna just about to cast and watch how, follow my bait and watch how these fish react, when I got a warning up on the live scope, or on the Garmin I should say, and my live scope disconnected. And I was like, what's going on? So basically I didn't have enough juice to be able to have the transducer on. And so I kind of panicked. I'm like, oh no, here we go again. I'm going to get down there. I'm not going to have a front graph to be able to see the depth. I mean, honestly, live scope aside, I just want to be able to see the depth when I'm up there running the trolling motor. And at least I have some idea with the live scope on what depths I'm in, because my front unit is not connected to the one on the helm, so I can't use the back transducer that one's hooked up to on the front. And that's something I need to look into as well. So it's all these little things that are kind of big things, but you can work around and deal with it. And so that's kind of where I'm at. But I made the decision Friday to hurry up and take it to the dealer. My dealer's the Boat Locker here in Hermitage. And Mark Sheriff, I mean, this is their busiest time of year, as you can imagine. Everybody's getting ready to go out boating. Everybody wants their boats de-winterized and whatever maintenance done that they need to have done for the season. And so they're extremely busy. They also partner with the boat club, so they work with Freedom Boat Club getting our boats ready. Well, Mark was kind enough to take some time out of his busy afternoon to take a look and see if we couldn't figure out what was going on. We switched out a couple circuit breakers, hoping that would solve the issue, and weren't still 100% sure. We were leaving Saturday for Hickory, so here I am in this situation yet again. But like I say, I'm just happy I have a boat and I'm able to do this and learn it with this process. So we didn't have the Lance Truck Camper Mobile podcast studio. That's another lesson learned this year. I mentioned it before, but got to get those reservations made as soon as possible in this climate we're in right now. The RV industry is exploding, boating industry is exploding, and so the two closest campsites to Lake Hickory were both booked up. They only had, both of them, it was kind of ironic, only had availability on like Wednesday and Thursday, and that wasn't going to work because it's like, well, where are we going to stay the rest of the time? So we ended up getting a hotel at the tournament headquarters there in Hickory, which was the Best Western, and it was actually really awesome, really nice hotel there, and love the whole town. If you've never been to Hickory, North Carolina, I recommend checking it out. Really cool place. But anyways, so we hit the road to Hickory on Saturday. Sunday was the first official day of practice, so we got up somewhat early, not super early, but we got out on the water. Dana and Sophie went with me for that first practice day. Sophie's the dog, by the way. So anyway, we get out there, and I'm just kind of learning the lake. I've never been to this lake before. A lot of these ladies have, because this is the third time that the Lady Bass Anglers Association has stopped at Lake Hickory. So a lot of these ladies have been fishing for a while. They're already pretty familiar with this lake, and so all these bodies of water I'm fishing this year and probably going forward are going to be all brand new to me. So I just basically wanted to, I did my map studies and I pulled up Navionics and I looked at some things before we got there, but so I had, somewhat of an idea. But this was my first time actually being out on the water there. So I decided to run south, and I just wanted to check out mostly that day, like I said, just learn the lay of the lake, do a little bit of fishing, of course, but figure out what the water temps are and, try to figure out if there's a pattern based on that. So I decided to go south and explore the south end out of the ramp that we took out of, which was the Wittenberg access. A lot of tournaments take out of that place. Pretty big parking lot, so it's a pretty nice little boat ramp area there. Beautiful lake, beautiful houses on the lake. Sunday was a great day. Weather was good. I had a few bites on Sunday. I was fishing pretty slow with a Senko for the most part. I think I threw the Gambler Flappy Daddy a little bit as well. Don't remember if I threw a crankbait on Sunday or not, but anyway, so I got a few bites and I didn't catch anything, and after I got back in, I never did make it to the north side to explore that because my plan was to go out the next day and hit the north side and kind of see what's going on there. Well, the forecast for the next day was not good. It was going to be a lot of rain, and I was actually beating myself up that I did not go north instead of south that first day. No real reason other than I didn't really have a whole lot of action there, and I knew if I went north, the water temps would be cooler, and maybe the bass would be in a different stage, like spawning and that sort of thing, and so I actually didn't sleep hardly at all that night. I was up for several hours just running things through my head, and And then we ended up not going out the next day because of the rain. A lot of the ladies did, and they got drenched, and didn't really. I don't think anybody really had much success that day. I'm sure they still learned a lot by going out, but we made the decision not to go back out. Then on Tuesday, Barbara Harris was in town. She got to town Monday evening, and so we had already talked in advance about her being my practice partner for that day. So we went out Tuesday, and then we got to go to the north side and kind of figure that out. So I tried a variety of different things, and caught one really nice keeper off of a scatter wrap, crankbait, almost like a square bill crankbait, but it's a little bit curved, and it gives it some really crazy action. It seemed like all the bites I were getting, even off the Cinco, were like immediate, and so I kind of felt like this was going to be kind of a reaction type bite going on here. And so I thought, you know what, buzz bait, that might be where it's at. I left all my buzz baits at home, so I went to Academy after we got back in from practice and got me a couple buzz baits. And I was like, yep, that's it. That's where it's going to be. So we did find a fish on a bed. We left him alone, but I was hoping he'd still be there come Thursday, tournament day. I'd check it out and see if I couldn't coax him to bite. So that was kind of one thing I had in my back pocket. Yeah, so then Wednesday was a shorter day because our meeting's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We have to be off the water and at the meeting on time for that day. So there was a new lady, Beth and Lori, two chicks in a boat, fished this tournament, and I'm sure you've heard their episode I did, which was our first official episode from the Lance Truck Camper Mobile Podcast Studio. That was a lot of fun. And anyway, a friend of theirs that they talked into coming down, she's a co-angler, her name's Judy, and this was her first ever LBA tournament. She was kind of scared to do it, but they talked her into coming down. We needed one more co-angler, and so she stepped up and did that. So I offered to take her out for the final practice day with me so she could get some time on the water before the tournament. And so we went out. Don't think we really had much luck. Checked out a few new spots, just kind of trying to devise my game plan for Thursday. And then we got off the water by about noon. That way we had time to get back to the hotel, change and all that, and get to the meeting, which the meeting was really cool. It was at a ballpark, and so that was fun. We were at the stadium. They made us hot dogs and typical ballpark food. That's where we had our pre-tournament meeting, and that was a lot of fun. So anyway, tournament day comes Thursday. I had a bit of a game plan. I knew I was going to check on that bedded fish. Mona was my co-angler for day one, and she is awesome. She's from Oregon, so she traveled quite a ways to fish this tournament. So Mona actually got a keeper fish off a dock, which was near where I was checking on that bedded fish. So we got the skunk off the boat like right away, which was really cool. And then we went and checked out the area where I'd seen all the bait busting the surface the other morning, and it was just dead calm, flat, nothing going on. Fished a little bit. The sun came out, and so we went back to check on that bedded fish, and I could see him. He was still there, and Mona had these little, what she caught that first fish off of, I forget what it's called, but just a real finesse, kind of wiggly, soft plastic bait in purple color. And I dangled that in front of him a couple of times, and then he finally took it. And so then I had my first keeper on the boat. And from there, we went back in this cove that I'd never even went back in there in practice, and it looked amazing. I don't know what it was about it. I had this great feeling, and I was like, there are fish in this cove. And I ended up catching another keeper. So I had my second keeper on the boat, and I was, starting to feel better and better. The bite kind of died back in there, and so then we went to another area, fished some other spots, and I'm like, we got to go back to that cove. And so we went back in there and fished for a while. I pulled another keeper fish out of there, and as I was reeling it in, there was a huge female chasing this fish, and Mona was netting it. And I mean, as she's netting it, that female is just staying at the surface. I'm like, what is she doing? That was crazy. I've never seen that before. I mean, she probably could have netted both fish at the same time. It was insane. So that was kind of fun and exciting. And those were my 3 fish I ended up weighing in for day 1. And day 2, I don't know what happened, but I did not have a good feeling about it. I just didn't have, my head wasn't in the right place. I didn't really have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. So that's something I've learned that I need to figure out, is the mental aspect of it. And that's something I'm going to work on. I've watched some videos. I watched a really great video from Brandon Polinick about that very topic. And so on the way home actually, and I've got some ideas on how I can work on that whole part of it. So something just threw me off on day 2 in my head, and it wasn't a good feeling. And then about 12:45 the wind. So one thing about day 2 is they were calling for wind gusts of up to 25 miles an hour, and we hadn't really had that yet out there, so nobody really knew how that was going to affect the fish. Temps had dropped a bit, and so we had that going on, and crazy situation. So about 12:30, 12:45, somewhere in there, we were fishing this cove. Thank goodness, not super far from the boat ramp. So it's like the boat ramp, you pull out of there, you hang a left, and there's a bridge. You go under the bridge, and that's to the south side of the lake. And we were down that way, but we were like in the first cove once you go under the bridge. So we weren't super far away, but wind was just really starting to kick in, and we were fishing it, weren't getting anything, and so I pulled up the trolling motor. It threw an error code, so it was stuck, and I'm like, oh man. So I was gonna fire up the motor us away from the bank. There was a huge laydown tree there that we were kind of drifting towards, so I was gonna move us away from the bank and reset the trolling motor. Well, the motor wouldn't start, like nothing. I made sure it was in neutral. I checked the kill switch. 2 things I know you always got to check to make sure if your boat's not starting. It was dead. And I had been getting a lot of voltage warnings and stuff on my units. And so it seemed like I had a few of those on day 1, and then day 2, it was happening more often. And so I had a feeling something was going on with the battery and maybe the charging system, because we were running around a lot. So I would think that would be recharging everything as we ran. I did kind of notice the motor hesitate to start a couple of times, but I really I'm like, kind of ignored it, because I'm like, I got to focus on fishing and finding these fish. We were getting really frustrated that neither one of us, well, actually, my co-angler did get one off a dock earlier in the morning, so she had one, but I didn't have any yet, and I was getting really frustrated. Anyway, so here we are, trolling motor stuck. It's beeping an error code, which thank goodness it's happened several times now, and so I'm like an expert on resetting it quickly. But now the motor won't start, and the wind gusts are picking up, and we are getting blown into this tree. And it's not like a tree you can push off on. It's like dead little twigs and branches. And so if that wind pushed us in there, we were going to be in the tree, basically. So I'm like shaking, running up to the trolling motor, doing the reset thing. Got that to reset, trimmed it down, hit the button to turn the prop on, press the plus button to give it as much speed as possible just to get us away from that tree. And I mean, we were like within an inch of hitting it. So that was a crazy moment for me. So after I calmed down a little bit, and we started trolling into the wind towards the marina, I was like, we got to figure out why or how, if we can get this motor started. So I had a Genius booster on the boat for that reason, in case something like that were to happen. And for some reason, the Genius booster would not get it to start. Like I hooked it up and still would not start. So I called Larry, the tournament director, gave him a heads up what was going on, and our plan was just to troll back to the marina, or the boat ramp at that point. So I called Dana. She was at the hotel, told her what was going on, so she was going to head to the lake with the trailer. And once we finally got close enough to the boat ramp, I still had quite a bit of juice on my trolling motor, thank goodness. And it took forever because we're fighting these 25-mile-an-hour wind gusts to troll back in. And so you can imagine that took a while. Larry had suggested not running it on full speed because that can draw the battery down pretty quick. So we're running it in at about 70% of the full power. And anyway, once we got close enough, there were some decent looking areas to fish right there around the boat ramp outside of the off limits, which was inside where the no wake zone buoys were. And so we decided just to kind of troll around that area. Kept keeping an eye on the trolling motor battery, of course, until closer to 3 o'clock, where we had to get back in. So we did that. We weren't having any success at all in that area, trying different things. The wind, again, was just really whipping, and so that was making things really difficult. And so a little ways after 2, I decided, just to call it. So we want to make sure we got that boat up on the trailer. We didn't know what kind of issues we were going to have not having the big motor to get it up there. So I called Dana. She backed the truck down, and I trolled it up onto the trailer. Of course, with the auto deploy, I couldn't get it all the way up because I had to have room to be able to have that motor be able to stow. And so ran it on the trailer. As soon as I got far enough up, I immediately cut the prop off, hit the trim up button, and it thankfully went off without a hitch. So that was good. But that was my day 2 on Lake Hickory. Not exactly how I wanted it to go. Maybe if I had, I know the motor battery issue was out of my control, but maybe if I had a different mentality or mindset for that day, things would have gone a little bit differently. So again, that's something I got to work on. Another thing I got to work on is I find myself being very, very conscious and worried about my co-angler. And so, like, we went to that same spot, that cove where I caught all those fish and had such a good feeling about it the day before. And it was like dead. Nothing was going on. We couldn't get anything to bite. If I was by myself, I think I probably would have spent more time in that cove. Because, Barbara Harris talks about windows, and I know there's fish. I knew there was fish in there. I just had to be there at the right time. And so I think if I could have stayed, I probably could have pulled at least a couple keepers out of there whenever they decided they wanted to bite. Don't know 100% sure, of course, but you always, you're questioning yourself, you're questioning all your decisions. So these are all things that I know will get better with more experience and time too, but definitely some stuff I have to work on. And so that's kind of the recap of the Lake Hickory tournament. Didn't finish in last place, but definitely didn't do as well as I was hoping to do. But it's definitely a learning experience. I called Mark at the boat locker after the weigh-in, and we kind of came up with a game plan on what we're going to do to fix the battery issue. So hopefully we'll get that fixed the first of this week, and I'll be able to get it out on the water a lot more before our Cane River tournament, which I'm really looking forward to the Cane River tournament. We're gonna have the truck camper with us this time. We already got a reservation. I'm really looking forward to experiencing a tournament with all the pieces in place finally. Here we are, like halfway through the year, but that's just what it's taken to get to this point. So stay tuned. I've got some great interviews lined up coming up for future episodes that you're really going to enjoy. So I hope that, what I'm putting out is helpful and entertaining too. You always want to be entertaining. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave a rating and review on whatever podcast app you listen on. And I just really appreciate you guys and your support and for listening to the show and sharing these episodes and spreading the word. I'm going to keep doing it. Excited to see where all of this leads. You just got to put in the time, put in the work, and roll with it. So here we go. See you next week.